Picture a city where a chip chains your emotions. A woman dares to love, to feel, defying a system that cages humanity. She hunts a rebel who could save or shatter her world. Freedom demands sacrifice. What would you give to feel your heart? Pulse is a dark sci-fi tale, echoing Black Mirror's chilling satire, set in a London where technology strangles love and desire. This is fiction, crafted for entertainment and reflection, not targeting real entities. The electric motorcycles roar, sliced through London's neon-drenched night, a primal scream against the city's sterile pulse. Elena Voss tore through Camden's black market alleys, her black armor glinting under Neurovibe's towering holographic billboards. The slogan, "Peace is optimal," throbbed like a heartbeat, mocking the chaos below. A gritty swirl of oil fumes, bootleg cigarettes, and sweat-soaked crowds bartering illegal tech. Her target, a pulse hacker, sprinted ahead, his silhouette weaving through vendors hawking chipped implants and stolen drones. Elena's heart beat with mechanical precision, never racing, never faltering. The pulse chip, implanted at 28 weeks of her mother's pregnancy via microscopic nanobots, crushed fear, erased doubt, and honed her into Neurovibe's deadliest operative. Her smart lenses locked onto the target. Male, approximately 30, heart rate spiking at 150, neural pathways fraying from tampering with his chip. He veered into a narrow alley, his shoulder clipping a trash can, aluminum cans clattering across wet concrete, their echoes sharp in the humid air. Elena gunned the throttle, her bike slicing past a billboard broadcasting a soothing female voice. "Pulse, your path to eternal peace." She leaned low, the wind whipping her face, narrowly dodging a surveillance drone's blue laser beam that carved a glowing arc through the dark. She plunged into the alley's shadows, where graffiti screamed from crumbling brick walls. Freedom is human. The air reeked of rotting garbage and scorched metal, a pungent assault she registered but didn't feel. Pulse nullified discomfort, distilling her existence to one purpose: capture or neutralize. The hacker scrambled over a chain-link fence, his boots slamming against steel, the clang reverberating like a gunshot. Elena skidded to a halt, tires screeching, and vaulted off the bike, her boots landing silently on the cracked pavement. She drew her stun pistol, its blue arc crackling with electric menace. "Freeze!" she commanded, her voice cold as tempered steel, cutting through the alley's din. He glanced back, his eyes ablaze with something forbidden, rage, or perhaps a flicker of desire, raw and unfiltered. He bolted, leaping down a rusted fire escape, his shadow flickering in the red neon glow of a nearby club. Elena pursued, her gloved hands gripping the railing, sliding down with the grace of a predator. Each movement precise, almost inhuman, as if she were an extension of the city's machinery. Pulse operated ceaselessly, a silent overseer in her bloodstream. It dulled the sting of a jagged fence scraping her arm, locked her heart rate at a steady 70 beats per minute, and banished the fear that should have surged when a combat drone materialized above, its red lights pulsing like a predator's eyes. She aimed and fired, the stun pistol's blue bolt striking true, the drone erupting in a shower of sparks and twisted metal, debris raining inches from her face. A faint shudder rippled through her core. She should feel terror, her pulse hammering as shards fell. Pulse stole that, crafting a flawless machine where a human once stood, devoid of the messy, vibrant chaos of emotion. Elena was among the first generation, born 33 years ago when the British government mandated pulse implants to avert societal collapse. She didn't cry at birth, only exhaled a sharp mechanical breath, her body activating like a device fresh from a factory line. Her parents, monitored by pulse, were assured she was happy in the womb, their own emotions dulled to prevent dissent. But what was happiness without the sting of sorrow or the rush of joy? Trained as a Neurovibe operative, she became a warrior, emotionless, perfect, a living weapon. Neurovibe, founded to prevent a catastrophic World War IV, argued that emotions, anger, love, jealousy, ambition were the roots of conflict, from bar fights to nuclear standoffs. Pulse ensured peace, they claimed, by rewiring humanity's soul. But at what cost? The hacker collapsed at the alley's dead end, his body convulsing, his illicit hack pushing his nervous system to the brink of collapse. Elena snapped electromagnetic cuffs onto his wrists, their hum sealing his fate, and recited the protocol. "You're arrested for violating the Emotion Act. Reconditioning awaits at Neurovibe's facility." He looked up, tears streaming down his face, his voice a broken whisper. I just wanted to feel real pain, just once. His words pierced her, a fleeting needle through the armor of her conditioning, but Pulse responded instantly, injecting a microdose of oxytocin to soothe the disturbance. She hauled him to his feet, handing him to the response team as their armored van's headlights carved harsh beams through the dark, illuminating the alley like a surgical theater. Back at her bike, a Neurovibe billboard loomed overhead, its message glowing, "Let Pulse guide you to peace." Elena caught her reflection in a shattered shop window, black hair tied in a severe knot, eyes unyielding, a face sculpted for war. For a fleeting moment she wondered, if she couldn't fear, couldn't love, couldn't cry, what was she? A machine, or a human hollowed out, stripped of her essence? The question hung unanswered as she revved the engine, the bike's growl swallowing her thoughts. She sped into London's neon maze, the city's pulse drowning out her own. Morning light sliced through the glass walls of Neurovibe's fortress, a monolithic structure squatting along the Thames, its reflective surface mirroring London's grey skyline. Inside, Commander Victor Crane slammed a file onto the polished steel desk, his movements sharp, deliberate. "Cassian Holt," he said, his voice a blade honed to cut through hesitation. "Leader of Libertus, a rogue cell hacking pulse chips. He's dangerous, Elena. We need him alive for interrogation." A holographic image of Cassian flickered into existence. 28 years old, tousled brown hair falling over a high forehead, green eyes piercing with defiant intelligence, a half-smile that seemed to taunt the world. Elena's heart skipped. A rare glitch in her pulse chip, a momentary crack in her controlled facade like a spark in a dead circuit. She nodded, masking the tremor that rippled through her, and left the room, the file clutched tightly in her gloved hand. Neurovibe had risen 3 decades ago, a corporate savior born from the ashes of near catastrophe. Scientists, backed by a desperate government, proved that emotions, rage, love, ambition, jealousy, were the kindling of chaos, sparking everything from domestic disputes to global wars. The spectre of World War IV, with its promise of mutually assured destruction, forced the world to act. Pulse was their solution. A chip implanted at 28 weeks of pregnancy, its nanobots weaving into the fetus's neural network, monitoring and regulating emotions before consciousness even formed. Babies emerged silent, their first breath a sharp mechanical exhale, bodies activating without the messy wail of human instinct. Emotions in this new world were fleeting, controlled. Love a shallow ripple that faded in moments, desire a brief chemical thrill, dissolving into a void that left no trace. Elena, among the first-generation children, grew up in this sterile reality, trained as a Neurovibe operative, her life a series of missions, her heart a stranger to tears. She remembered her mother, Clara, once whispering of true love from the pre-Pulse era, her voice trembling before a Neurovibe call cut her off, her eyes wide with suppressed fear. Elena's hunt for Cassian led her to a Shoreditch underground club, a pulsing hive of rebellion hidden beneath the city's polished surface. Red lights flickered like dying stars, techno beats thundered through the air, vibrating in her chest. Pulse hackers danced with wild abandon, their eyes blazing with taboo emotions, ecstasy, fury, longing, freed by their tampered chips. She spotted Cassian in a shadowed corner, his lean frame leaning close to a young woman, passing her a small hack device, its surface glinting faintly. Their gazes locked across the crowded room, a jolt like lightning searing through Elena's nerves, unfiltered by pulse. He flashed a smirk, confident and enigmatic, then melted into the throng, his brown jacket blending with the sea of bodies. A chase erupted, raw and visceral. Elena tore through Shoreditch's labyrinthine alleys, her boots pounding wet pavement, dodging the blue laser beams of surveillance drones that swept the night like vengeful spirits. Cassian was a ghost, vaulting over rooftops with feline grace, sliding down rusted fire escapes, always a step ahead, his laughter echoing faintly, taunting her. She pushed harder, her breath steady but her mind racing, an anomaly in her controlled existence. In a shadowed corner, pinned against a flickering Neurovibe billboard. Pulse protects you from yourself. She grabbed his jacket, slamming him against the wall. Their faces were inches apart, breaths mingling in the cold air, the heat of their proximity a stark contrast to the city's chill. "Why do you serve them?" Cassian whispered, his green eyes blazing like wildfire, searing into her soul. "Don't you want to live, to feel your heart?" His hand brushed hers, a fleeting touch that burned through her armored gloves, igniting something deep and forbidden. Elena shoved him back, her heart pounding, another pulse glitch, louder, more insistent. He slipped away, vanishing into the neon haze, leaving her with a strange, aching void. For 4 days, Elena unraveled, her carefully constructed world fracturing. In her dim South Bank flat, neon from a Neurovibe billboard, pulse, freedom from emotion, cast harsh shadows across the bare walls, mocking her inner turmoil. She lay awake, Cassian's image haunting her like a ghost. Those green eyes that seemed to see through her, that daring half-smile promising something beyond her reach, the fleeting touch that lingered like a brand on her skin. "Who is he to do this to me?" she muttered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the city outside. Pulse tried to stabilize her, injecting serotonin to dull the disturbance. But her heart raced, a glitch that wove fear and desire into a tangled knot, like standing at the edge of a cliff with no safety net. She recalled her mother's hushed stories of love before Pulse, tales of hearts that soared and broke, but this sensation, burning, alive, terrifying, was something new, something her training couldn't name. On the 4th morning, she sent a curt message to Neurovibe. "I'm unwell. Need a few days." She told herself it was fatigue from relentless missions, but deep down, she feared facing Crane, feared his piercing gaze would read the faltering resolve in her eyes. Sitting by the window, London's neon skyline sprawling below, she traced the implant port behind her neck, its cold metal a reminder of her chains. Could she feel as Cassian did, raw and unfiltered? The question gnawed at her, unanswered, until a small device hidden in her jacket buzzed, a coded message from an unknown source. "Meet me if you dare. Warehouse 17, docks." Her heart surged, not from the chip's manipulation, but from a spark of something human, awakening after decades of dormancy. Cassian had been watching Elena since their encounter in Shoreditch, his mind calculating even as his heart stirred. Hacking into Neurovibe's classified files, he'd uncovered her profile. First generation, born with an early model pulse chip, less stable than later iterations, prone to glitches when confronted with intense emotions, like the racing pulse he'd felt when his hand brushed hers. She was a potential key, a high-ranking operative whose defection could destabilize Neurovibe from within, a strategic asset for Libertas's rebellion. Yet he couldn't deny the pull she exerted, those cold, guarded eyes hiding a spark of longing, a flame he wanted to touch despite the danger of betrayal. Inviting her to Libertas's hideout was a high-stakes gamble, blending cold strategy with a reckless desire to see if she could be more than an enemy, more than a tool. Elena arrived at Warehouse 17 under a moonless sky, the air thick with the briny tang of the Thames and the acrid bite of rusted iron. Cassian met her alone in the cavernous space, a single oil lamp casting flickering shadows across his angular face. He stood close, too close, his presence a challenge. "Are you here to arrest me or to understand me?" he asked, his voice low and deliberate, green eyes locking onto hers, his breath grazing her cheek in the chill air. Elena, rattled by a surge of emotions she couldn't name, felt her throat tighten. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice softer than intended, "but I'm here." A slow, knowing smile curved his lips, and he stepped back, gesturing for her to follow. He led her through a rusted door into a warmly lit room where Libertas gathered, their laughter and clinking plates a stark contrast to the cold world outside. "She's a guest, not an enemy. Yet," Cassian announced, his tone light but his eyes watchful. Myra, a 20-year-old with a blonde ponytail and a radiant grin, bounced over, pulling Elena to a worn wooden table. "Eat this! It's great! I made it!" she chirped, thrusting a burnt cookie into Elena's hand, her flour-dusted cheeks glowing with pride. The gesture, so earnest and unguarded, pierced Elena's defenses, melting the tension in her shoulders. Libertas was a family of 5, unbound by pulse, their humanity a rebellion in itself. Mira, the group's heart, radiated warmth, her laughter infectious as sunlight. She baked with clumsy enthusiasm, flour smudging her face, giggling as she insisted everyone try her charred creations, beaming when they humoured her. Cassian tucked her in at night, mending her tattered old doll with careful stitches, his voice soft as he called her kiddo, a term laced with brotherly affection. Tomas, 35, a former engineer with greying hair and a serious demeanour, crafted hack tools with meticulous precision. He spoke of dreams to build schools where children could learn to love, his voice steady but eyes bright with hope. He hugged Mira when she missed her mother, a quiet anchor for her exuberance. Lila, 30, an ex-nurse with curly brown hair and a gentle smile, was the group's caretaker, tending wounds and spirits alike. She sang off-key folk tunes to spark laughter, her voice cracking comically, and slipped candies into Mira's pocket, winking as she whispered, "Don't let Ravi steal them." Ravi, 27, a former athlete with a muscled frame and a hot temper, was a born fighter, his fists as quick as his grumbles. Yet he softened for Mira, catching her when she stumbled, muttering, "Little trouble, watch your step," his scowl betrayed by a fond glance. Cassian, the leader, was a blend of sharp intellect and burning resolve, his green eyes always scanning, planning. He hosted dinners with the warmth of a big brother, ensuring everyone shared stories, his presence knitting the group into a family. Elena stood frozen, watching them dine around a scarred wooden table, the lamplight casting a golden glow over their faces. Mira knocked over a water glass, giggling as it splashed. Cassian wiped the table, pinching her cheek with a teasing, "Careful, kiddo." Mira pouted, then flung her arms around him, demanding a fairy tale about a brave princess. Tomas spoke of his vision for a free world, his voice low but fervent. Lila broke into a deliberately terrible song, making everyone laugh. Ravi grumbled about the noise but joined in, his arm slung over Lila's shoulder. This bond, laughter, touches, shared dreams, was alien to Elena, who had grown up among colleagues who never smiled, never touched, their interactions as sterile as a lab. Her chest tightened, not from the chip's control, but from something vibrant, something alive, stirring within her. After dinner, Cassian led her to the docks, where the Thames lapped against weathered stones, its rhythm a quiet counterpoint to the city's hum. He took her hand, his touch warm, grounding, his eyes earnest as they met hers. "This is what Pulse steals, Elena. Love, family, real laughter. Don't you want to live like us, to feel what we feel?" She trembled, unable to speak, but his fingers tightened around hers, gentle yet insistent, like a promise of something greater. For the first time, her heart raced without the chip's interference, a wild, untamed beat that felt like freedom. She left the warehouse, her mind reeling, Cassian's vision clinging to her like a second skin. Over the next weeks, Elena and Cassian met in secret, stealing moments in the city's forgotten corners, an abandoned park where ivy choked old benches, a derelict tube station echoing with distant drips, a rooftop overlooking the Thames, its waters reflecting the city's neon veins. Their connection deepened, sensual yet restrained, woven through glances and touches that carried the weight of rebellion. In a shadowed alcove, lit only by a flickering street lamp, he pulled her close, their breaths mingling, his hands framing her face as their eyes locked, a silent vow passing between them. Another night, under a canopy of stars, he traced the line of her jaw, his touch igniting a warmth that Pulse could never manufacture. Cassian began hacking her pulse chip during these meetings, disabling it for brief, stolen moments, allowing her to feel love, a fierce, consuming tide that surged through her, unlike the fleeting hollow thrills Neurovibe engineered. One starry night, on a rooftop where the city sprawled below like a circuit board, he leaned close, his voice a low murmur against her ear. "Imagine a world without Pulse, Elena, where we love without fear, live without chains. Do you trust me?" She nodded, her heart no longer a stranger, beating for him, for Libertas, for the dream of freedom. 3 months later, in a crumbling East London flat, where a single bulb cast flickering shadows across peeling walls, Elena stood trembling, clutching a pregnancy test. 2 red lines glowed in the dim light, undeniable. She faced Cassian, her voice barely above a whisper, shaking with a mix of fear and wonder. "Cassian, you're going to be a father." He dropped to his knees, pulling her into a fierce embrace, his face pressed against her stomach, tears streaming down his cheeks, a rare, raw display in a world where tears were forbidden. "Our child will be free," he vowed, his voice steady despite the emotion cracking it. "They'll cry, they'll laugh, they'll love, not like us, not like this world." They sat together, hands clasped, planning a future that seemed both impossible and inevitable, a campaign to dismantle Pulse, to liberate humanity from its emotional chains. It would require time, months to gather recruits, develop advanced hack tools, and forge alliances with other underground cells. Libertas agreed to retreat to an abandoned farm on London's outskirts, a place of overgrown fields and sagging barns, where the air carried the heavy scent of earth and decaying wood, far from Neurovibe's watchful eyes. Elena resigned from Neurovibe, sending a curt message through her encrypted terminal. No reason, effective immediately. Her goal was singular, to shield her unborn child from the chip that had defined her life for 33 years, a device that turned humans into obedient cogs in a machine. Victor Crane, her commander, responded with a video call, his eyes narrow, glinting like polished steel. "You're certain, Voss?" he asked, his tone laced with suspicion, as if he could sense the rebellion brewing beneath her calm facade. She nodded, keeping her expression neutral, but her heart pounded, not from Pulse's control, but from her own defiance. Crane's gaze lingered, and she knew he'd ordered surveillance, his instincts honed by years of rooting out dissent. Elena left the glass fortress that day, her steps quick, the weight of her decision settling like a stone in her chest, but also like a spark, igniting her resolve. The farm became a sanctuary, its isolation a shield against the city's omnipresent surveillance. Elena integrated into Libertas, enveloped by their familial warmth, a stark contrast to the cold efficiency of her past life. Mira, the group's beating heart, radiated joy like a sunbeam breaking through London's perpetual fog. She insisted on teaching Elena to bake, her enthusiasm undeterred by their limited supplies. Flour dusted her cheeks as she kneaded dough, giggling when it stuck to her fingers. "You're worse than me, Elena," she teased, her eyes sparkling as she offered a lumpy, charred cookie. "But it's yummy, right?" Elena took a bite, the bitter taste irrelevant against Mira's infectious grin, and found herself smiling, a genuine smile, unprompted by chemical manipulation. Mira's energy was boundless. She sang off-key folk tunes, her voice cracking comically, pulling Elena into clumsy dances around the barn, their laughter echoing off the wooden beams. One evening, she curled up beside a crackling fire, her head resting on Cassian's lap, her blonde hair spilling over his knees. "Tell me a fairy tale," she mumbled, half asleep. Cassian spun a story of a brave princess who broke free from a cursed kingdom, his voice low and soothing. Mira yawned, murmuring, "You're the best big brother," before drifting off. Cassian tucked a blanket around her, his fingers lingering as he mended her tattered doll with a needle and thread, his expression soft, a rare glimpse of the man beneath the rebel leader. Tomas, 35, was a former engineer, his greying hair and serious demeanour belying a deep well of hope. He spent hours tinkering with hack devices, their circuits spread across a makeshift workbench, but paused to share his dream of building schools where children could learn to feel, to love, to dream. His voice was steady, but his eyes shone with quiet passion. When Mira spoke of missing her mother, stolen by Neurovibe's reconditioning, Thomas wrapped her in a gentle hug, his strength a silent promise of protection. He took Elena under his wing, patiently explaining the mechanics of their hack tools, his diagrams scratched into the dirt floor, welcoming her as one of their own. Lila, 30, an ex-nurse with curly brown hair and a nurturing smile, was the group's anchor, tending to both physical and emotional wounds. She brewed tomato soup for Elena during bouts of morning sickness, her hands steady as she stirred the pot, her bad jokes coaxing reluctant smiles. "Why did the tomato turn red?" she'd ask, grinning. "Because it saw the soup pot." Her off-key singing was a nightly ritual, her voice deliberately wobbling to spark laughter, the group collapsing into giggles as she hit spectacularly wrong notes. She slipped candies into Mira's pocket, winking conspiratorially, and held Ravi's hand when his temper flared, her calm presence soothing his storms. Ravi, 27, a former athlete with a muscled frame and a fiery temper, was a born fighter, his fists as quick as his sharp tongue. He trained Elena in hand-to-hand combat, his shouts of "harder, agent" echoing across the fields, but his grin when she landed a solid punch revealed his pride. He grumbled about Mira's clumsiness, but was always there to catch her when she tripped, muttering, "Little trouble, watch your step," his scowl softening into a fond glance. His loyalty to the group was fierce, his strength a shield for them all. Cassian, the leader, was a paradox. Sharp intellect wrapped in burning resolve, his green eyes always scanning, planning, yet softening when he looked at his makeshift family. He organized their dinners with care, ensuring everyone shared a story or a dream, his presence knitting them together. He'd ruffle Mira's hair, tease Ravi's temper, and listen to Tomas's plans, his leadership rooted in love as much as strategy. Elena was awestruck by this bond, so unlike the sterile interactions of her Neurovibe colleagues, who never laughed, never touched, their lives as grey as the city's skyline. One night, gathered around a crackling fire, Mira dozed with her head on Cassian's shoulder, her soft snores punctuating the quiet. Lila launched into a deliberately awful rendition of a folk song, her voice cracking as the group dissolved into laughter. Tomas spoke of a world where children could run free, his hands sketching invisible schools in the air. Ravi, grumbling about the cold, slung an arm around Lila, his scowl betrayed by a warm smile. Elena watched, her eyes welling with tears, her first unfiltered by pulse, born of a longing she couldn't name. She reached for Cassian's hand, her fingers intertwining with his, and whispered, "I want our child to have this, to know this kind of love." He squeezed her hand, his eyes reflecting the firelight, promising a future they'd fight for. A sensual moment came one night under a steady rain, the world reduced to the patter of droplets on the barn's roof. Cassian led Elena to a secluded corner where moonlight pierced the wooden slats, casting silver patterns across their faces. He hacked her pulse chip, disabling it with a small device that hummed faintly, its light pulsing like a heartbeat. As the chip's control faded, a flood of sensation overwhelmed her. His scent, a mix of leather and earth, the warmth of his breath as he leaned close, the electric brush of his fingers against her wrist. Their eyes locked, a silent conversation passing between them, and she pulled him nearer, their bodies pressed together, heartbeats sinking in a rhythm that felt like defiance. "You gave me my heart," she whispered, her voice trembling with the weight of newfound freedom. He kissed her forehead, a tender gesture that held a promise, "And I'll give the world its freedom too." The moment was raw, intimate, yet restrained, their connection deeper than flesh, a rebellion against the world that sought to chain them. Danger shattered their sanctuary. Neurovibe, tracing Elena's abrupt resignation through their vast surveillance network, pinpointed the farm. One moonless night, the sky erupted with the guttural roar of drones, their red beams slicing through the darkness like vengeful eyes, illuminating the overgrown fields in stark, crimson light. Armored Neurovibe operatives stormed from steel-plated vans, their stun rifles spitting blue electric bolts that crackled through the air, igniting patches of dry grass. Elena jolted awake to the deafening boom of an explosion, the barn's walls shuddering as glass shattered somewhere nearby. She grabbed her stun pistol, its grip cold against her palm, and sprinted to the barn's main room, where Libertas was already rallying, their faces taut with determination. Ravi, his muscles taut, smashed an operative through a splintered window, the glass exploding outward as blood trickled from his knuckles, staining the wooden floor. Tomas, his eyes stinging from acrid smoke, hunched over a makeshift workbench, frantically hacking a drone control panel with a handheld device, his fingers flying across its interface. 3 drones collided mid-air, their fiery wreckage crashing into the fields, sending up plumes of sparks and twisted metal that rained like a meteor shower. Lila, her face calm despite the chaos, bandaged a gash on Ravi's arm with practiced efficiency, her voice cutting through the din. "To the woods, now, move." Cassian, perched on the barn's sagging roof, fired his stun pistol with lethal precision, blue arcs felling 2 operatives in quick succession, their bodies crumpling like discarded puppets. A drone locked onto him, its red beam narrowing, forcing him to leap from the roof, rolling through a patch of burning grass, the flames licking at his jacket. Elena took point, her training kicking in despite the fear clawing at her chest, a fear Pulse could no longer suppress. She fired a single, precise shot, a blue bolt slicing through the air to strike a drone, its circuits frying in a burst of sparks that lit the night. She grabbed Mira's hand, pulling her toward the tree line, the girl's blonde ponytail bouncing as they ran. An operative emerged from the smoke, his rifle raised, its barrel glinting ominously. Ravi charged, tackling the man to the ground, his fists pounding with brutal force, but a stun bolt caught his shoulder, sending him sprawling, his body twitching from the electric shock. The group stumbled toward the woods, their breaths ragged, the drone's relentless pursuit marked by red beams that cut through the trees, splintering bark and igniting small fires. The air was thick with the stench of gunpowder, charred grass and fear, the ground trembling with each explosion, the night a canvas of chaos and desperation. In the dense woods, as they crouched behind a cluster of oaks, an operative emerged from the shadows, his rifle trained on Cassian, who was firing at a drone from behind a tree. Mira, her hair wild, her eyes fierce with a courage that belied her youth, shoved Cassian to the ground, screaming, "Big brother, watch out!" A blue electric bolt pierced her chest, the force throwing her backward, blood blooming across her white sweater like a crimson flower, her tattered doll slipping from her fingers to land in the dirt. She collapsed, her body crumpling like a broken marionette, and Cassian scrambled to her, his scream tearing through the night, raw and primal. "Mira, no! Kiddo, stay with me!" He cradled her, stroking her blood-matted hair, his hands trembling as he pressed her doll to her chest, as if its presence could anchor her to life. Mira's eyes fluttered, her lips curving in a weak, radiant smile, her voice a fading whisper. "Tell me another story about the free princess." Her words trailed off, her eyes closing, that smile lingering like a final gift. Cassian sobbed, his tears falling onto her face, a rare and wrenching sight in a world where tears were outlawed. Elena, frozen a few paces away, felt her heart shatter, the pain raw and unfiltered, a torrent that pulse could no longer contain. Lila collapsed against Ravi, her sobs muffled in his chest, while Tomas sank to his knees, his fists pounding the earth, his silent grief a mirror to their shared loss. The group dragged Cassian away, his screams echoing as he clutched Mira's lifeless form, her blood staining his shirt, a scarlet testament to their failure. They fled deeper into the woods, the drone's red beams fading, but the weight of Mira's death clinging to them like a shadow, a wound that would never heal. Mira's death set Cassian ablaze, his once vibrant eyes darkening with a fury that consumed him. The warmth that had defined him, his laughter at Mira's antics, his gentle teasing of the group, burned away, leaving only a man driven by vengeance and purpose. Libertas gathered in the damp, cramped confines of an underground bunker, their faces etched with grief, pleading with him to stay, to plan, to survive. Elena, 7 months pregnant, her belly swollen with their child, fell to her knees before him, her hands gripping his, tears streaming down her face. "Don't go, Cassian," she begged, her voice breaking, raw with desperation. "We need you. Our child needs you." He knelt, cupping her face, his thumbs brushing away her tears, and kissed her, a deep, desperate kiss that tasted of farewell. "I'm doing this for our child, for Mira, for freedom," he whispered, his voice steady but his eyes haunted, reflecting a man who knew he might not return. Before dawn, he slipped away, mounting his motorcycle and speeding toward Neurovibe's fortress, exploiting a narrow window when their forces were stretched thin, scouring London for Libertas. Cassian infiltrated the fortress, a labyrinth of glass and steel that gleamed like a predator's teeth under the city's grey sky. He moved like a shadow, his black jacket blending with the dark corridors, dodging the red laser beams of surveillance drones that patrolled with mechanical precision. Operatives in black armor patrolled the halls, their stun rifles humming, but Cassian was a ghost, his training as a rebel honed by years of evasion. He downed 2 operatives with quick, silent shots from his stun pistol, blue arcs crackling through the air, their bodies collapsing before they could raise an alarm. A drone whirred above, its red lights locking onto him. He rolled behind a steel pillar, firing upward, the bolt shattering the drone in a burst of sparks that rained like fireflies. His shoulder ached from a glancing blow, blood seeping through his jacket, but he pushed forward, driven by a singular purpose. He reached the control hub, a sterile chamber at the fortress's heart, its walls lined with massive screens displaying the neural data of millions, pulse chips pulsing in unison, a digital cage for humanity's soul. Cassian's fingers flew across the central console, hacking into the system with a device Tomas had crafted, its circuits glowing faintly as it breached Neurovibe's defenses. He sought to disable every chip, to free the world in one stroke, but the system was vast, its security layers a maze of code. Alarms blared, a piercing wail that echoed through the hub, and footsteps thundered closer, operatives converging, their rifles ready. Time was slipping away, each second a tightening noose. Realizing he couldn't liberate all, Cassian shifted focus, targeting a single chip, Elena's. If he could free her, their child would be born unchained, a beacon of hope. The screen flashed green, Elena Voss's pulse disabled. His hands shook as he sent a final message through his hacked comms, his voice low, breaking. "Give our child freedom, Elena. I love you." The hub's doors burst open, operatives flooding in, their rifles spitting blue bolts that lit the room like a storm. Cassian fought with desperate ferocity, his stun pistol blazing, downing 3 drones in quick succession, their wreckage crashing against the screens. He punched an operative, his fist connecting with a sickening crunch, blood dripping from his knuckles. Another operative lunged, and Cassian twisted, firing a bolt that sent the man sprawling. But there were too many, their numbers overwhelming, their training a match for his desperation. A bullet tore through his chest, a searing pain that stole his breath. He staggered, collapsing against the console, blood pooling on the glass floor, his hand clutching Mira's tattered doll, its fabric stained with his blood. His vision blurred, the screen's glow fading, but he saw Mira's smile, Elena's eyes, and whispered, "I tried," as darkness claimed him. The scene was broadcast across London's public screens, Neurovibe's cold synthetic voice narrating, "Deviant Cassian Holt neutralized. Pulse secures your peace." In a hidden bunker, Elena sat with Libertas, her hands cradling her swollen belly, the TV's harsh light illuminating their tear-streaked faces. Lila held her tightly, her own sobs muffled, while Ravi punched the concrete wall, his roar of rage shaking the room. Thomas bowed his head, his hands clasped, whispering, "You did what you could, brother." Elena wept, her first unfiltered tears, the pain of losing Cassian a blade twisting in her heart, cutting deeper with each breath. She clutched the comms device, replaying his final words, her fingers tracing the screen as if she could pull him back. Libertas was shattered, their spirit bruised, but survival demanded retreat. Neurovibe's operatives scoured the city, their drones relentless, bounties posted for any trace of the rebels. The group fled deeper underground, joining a network of bunkers where other anti-pulse cells hid, their numbers small but growing. Elena, though heartbroken, found strength in her unborn child, each kick a reminder of Cassian's sacrifice. She held Lila's hand, her voice firm despite the tremor. "We fight on. For Cassian, for Mira, for our future." She touched her belly, feeling the life within, and made a silent vow. Her child would know freedom, no matter the cost. In the final month of her pregnancy, Elena emerged as Libertas's leader, her grief transformed into a quiet, unyielding resolve. She recruited tirelessly, drawing in hackers who'd cracked their chips, families torn apart by Neurovibe's reconditioning, and young dreamers craving the emotions their chips denied. From 5, Libertas grew to dozens, then hundreds, a network of rebels hiding in bunkers, abandoned warehouses, and secret flats tucked in London's forgotten corners. They launched guerrilla strikes on pulse relay stations, their hack devices frying servers, each attack a spark in the growing fire of rebellion. They spread Cassian and Mira's story through encrypted channels, their names becoming symbols of resistance, whispered in the shadows of a city that feared to feel. Elena drew strength from Libertas' bond, Lila's warm soups, served with a gentle smile. Tomas's new hack tools, crafted with meticulous care. Ravi's grueling training sessions, his shouts tempered by pride when a recruit succeeded. After each small victory they gathered, sharing hugs and stories, a family forged in loss but bound by hope. Neurovibe tightened its grip, rolling out Pulse 2.0, its billboards sneering across London. Eternal peace, no deviance. The upgraded chip promised even tighter control, its nanobots burrowing deeper into neural pathways, dulling even the faintest sparks of rebellion. London's citizens drifted through their lives, their emotions reduced to fleeting pulses. Love a momentary flutter, desire a brief chemical spike, both dissolving into a grey void that left them hollow. Families sat in silence, their meals devoid of laughter. Lovers parted without longing, their touches mechanical. Yet beneath the surface, cracks appeared. Underground forums buzzed with rumours of Libertas, of a man who died for freedom, of a girl whose smile defied the chip. Cassian's final stand, Mira's radiant grin captured in grainy videos, spread like wildfire, igniting hearts that Pulse couldn't fully extinguish. In a cramped bunker lit by flickering oil lamps, Elena gave birth, her cries mingling with the pain and hope of a new beginning. Lila, her hands steady from years as a nurse, guided the delivery, her voice calm despite the tension. Ravi stood guard at the entrance, his rifle ready, his eyes scanning the dark for any sign of drones. Tomas held Elena's hand, his quiet strength anchoring her as she pushed through the pain. The child emerged, and a sound shattered the silence. A piercing, primal wail, the first cry in 33 years, a sound so raw it seemed to tear through the fabric of their world. Elena cradled her daughter, tears streaming down her face, and named her Mira, the name a tribute to the girl whose light still guided them. The infant's eyes, wide and curious, echoed Cassian's intensity, and her tiny smile mirrored Mira's warmth. "You'll cry, you'll laugh, you'll love," Elena whispered, her voice trembling with a mother's fierce promise. Lila wrapped them in a blanket, her own tears falling as she embraced them. Ravi, his stoic facade cracking, offered a rare smile, his voice gruff. "She's a fighter like her parents." Tomas, ever the chronicler, scribbled in their log. Today, freedom began. Elena began a journal for her daughter. Her words scratched onto scavenged paper, a legacy for the future. "Mira, I lost your father, your namesake, but found a family in Libertas. You are our hope, but freedom demands blood. I'll fight for you, for a world where you can feel everything." She sang the folk tune Mira loved, her voice shaky but filled with love, the melody weaving through the bunker like a thread of defiance. A year later, Libertas had grown into a formidable force, their numbers swelling to hundreds, their strikes against Pulse stations bolder, more coordinated. They destroyed thousands of chips, each fried server a blow to Neurovibe's control. Mira's cry, recorded in secret, became a rallying call, shared through encrypted networks, a sound that stirred hearts across the city. Neurovibe retaliated, their drones patrolling relentlessly, bounties soaring for any rebel's capture, their propaganda flooding the airwaves with promises of peace. But the fire of rebellion burned brighter, fueled by the stories of Cassian's sacrifice, Mira's courage, and a child born free. Elena stood on a rooftop, London's neon sprawl glittering below, a city both beautiful and cruel. She held her daughter, now a year old, whose laughter, bright, unrestrained, cut through the night like a beacon. She taught Mira to smile, to giggle, telling her tales of her father's bravery, of a girl named Mira whose love bound them all. Yet fear lingered, a shadow in Elena's heart. The war was far from won, and Neurovibe's power loomed large. As she looked out over the city, her daughter's tiny hand clutching her finger, she whispered a question to the wind. "Is freedom worth the blood of those I love?" The answer remained elusive, hanging in the air as baby Mira cooed, her laughter a fragile promise of hope. Below, Libertas prepared for the battles ahead, their resolve unbroken, their dream of a free world burning brighter than ever. Pulse probes the cost of emotional freedom. Is it worth the lives of those you cherish? In a world that stifles humanity, can love and family overcome the machine? When a child's cry pierces the silence, is it the dawn of hope or merely the prelude to an endless war?